Hi everyone. Okay, so I read the article, Does Arts-Based Research Have a Future? And so it was written by Elliot Eisner in 2005 as a part of a first European conference on arts-based research, just to give you sort of like a foundation for, sort of his perspective on writing this article. So essentially obviously what he's discussing is, does arts-based research have a future? But also he's discussing and advocating for the validity of arts-based research as a means for enlarging human experiences to promote understandings. So essentially he's discussing, we sort of widely obviously consider scientific research to be a valid type of research. So why can't arts-based research be seen as like valid, complex, or similar in importance as scientific research. So he has a lot of other questions throughout the article. And just some of the other ones that I selected are, what is the basis for believing that research is a proper descriptor for what people in the arts do, and that arts-based research is neither an anomaly or an oxymoron? So what is at stake for trying to advocate for arts-based research in general? And then again, what is the future of arts-based research? So what he does within this article is, he obviously has a very vast knowledge on the topic and also art education in general. So he's sort of writing this article almost from a first-person perspective. I think, he's presenting this having done a vast amount of research. So it's not that he's presenting research, he's presenting sort of his perspective based on his vast amount of knowledge. So he talks about, sort of in 1993, there was the first Arts-Based Research Institute at Stanford, which is where Elliot Eisner was a professor when he was alive. And so they're sort of, they were discussing what is the relationship between arts and educational research, and then he wrote several books sort of conjecturing how these things could relate to one another. And so he does go through and answer briefly and concisely these complex questions that he's presenting in these articles. And so something that he says I think is interesting is, if arts are regarded as a form of experience in the way that John Dewey describes, then it could be argued that fine arts do not define the limits of art. Aesthetic experience can be secured in the process of doing scientific research, as well as in the satisfaction secured from its results. And so he goes through and actually discusses a debate that he had with Gardner about traditional research. And he was saying that Gardner argued that doctoral training was essentially that training designed to prepare a skilled journeyman in the conventional research methods. But Elliot Eisner is saying, that if we open up the field of research and expand our notions of what research is qualified as, then, professors as well as doctoral students will be able to, expand their notions of what research is and provide new answers and new insights to the things that we're looking at, because we're allowing them to approach research from a new standpoint. So part of what he's saying is that by, allowing students and faculty to push these boundaries and explore alternative ways of knowing, it sort of creates a methodological pluralism, and a more like multifaceted way of knowing. So he goes through and then what he does is he presents various scenarios through which a teacher would present and explain to students something that is aesthetic and something that is practical. And so one example that he gives is, he has a styrofoam cup and he puts coffee in the cup and he adds cream and tastes it and points out that that is a practical action, because you're adding cream, making the coffee taste better. Then what he does is he puts the black coffee, in a transparent cup and pours some cream in it and observes the way that the cream, sort of swirls around in the coffee, obviously creating like a beautiful aesthetic sort of moment. And then he sort of explains to the students that that activity is experienced for its own satisfaction. So it is aesthetic. It's not simply practical. And I think that this sort of explains really eloquently the differences between these things, and their functions in a way that's sort of, I would say, in layman's terms. And so he goes through and he presents sort of how eloquently in this way that art and aesthetic experiences can be rich in a different way than traditional research and practical research methods, and that through our experiences with in an aesthetic experience, we can have more complex, multifaceted experiences in a way that's different, not necessarily better, but a new way of looking at something. And so then we can apply this new way of looking in the way that we look at art to looking at arts-based research. And I think that this is really, I think that this presents it in a really interesting way. And so he says, art provides canonical images that organize our world and that apply to more than we bargain for. Sometimes these images are so powerful that we find it difficult to see the world they address in any other way. Art not only imitates life, life often imitates art. And I think that, as artists and art educators, we've all had very complex, multifaceted experiences, looking at art and experiencing visual things and visual culture. And I think that arts-based research sort of provides an opportunity for us to, look deeper into research in a way that we cannot maybe express through words, but we know that we can express so many more things through what we make, so why shouldn't this be seen as a valid type of research? And so when he asks you, what is the future of arts-based research in education, he says two things need to occur. First, there need to be people who are committed to exploring it. So those who are using arts-based research as their primary form of research, not just sort of like an offshoot, something that they do. Sometimes it needs to be, like a direct focus. They're really willing to dive headfirst into the field. And then second, the attitudes of existing university faculty need to be supportive. And so rather than estranging or sort of separating people who do arts-based research from traditional research, they need to be sort of taken into the art education research field with open arms as a means for making this seen as a valid type of research. So I think that what he's saying is there is a future for arts-based research, and I know from my experiences at various conferences that it's definitely something that's happening more, something that people are thinking about and talking about more. And I think this article really presented something for me, that I don't know a lot about. I've gone to some talks about arts-based research, but I think that as the practice becomes more commonplace, articles such as these and research about arts-based research is pivotal to the growth of it within the fields of art education. But I think it's really exciting because I think art education is uniquely positioned to sort of develop research in a new manner, and I think that that's rather exciting. So I would suggest that if you're interested in arts-based research, I think this is a really good article for, I guess, maybe finding some practical ways to explain the field of arts-based research to people who maybe don't work in the art education field, explain to people maybe why this is a valid type of research, and sort of be able to find your words and find your footing for why this is the case. So I definitely would recommend it. Thanks.